Hi everyone, and thank you very much, Mariana. So as Mariana mentioned, my name's Kiro, and I'm in the global selling team based here in the UK, and I support sellers primarily expanding into the US. And happy to be with you all today to kind of discuss how best to manage kind of the peak period in the US and kind of what to focus on along with Ash and Jay. So I'm just going to switch off my camera for now. But let's go through the agenda. So we're going to look at four key topics here. So first, we're going to look at inventory management when using FBA, sort of best practices around managing your IPI score. Then we're going to look at improving conversion by optimizing your product detail page and using A+ content. We're then going to cover promotions and advertising, and then finally we'll conclude by looking at how to manage your account health and sort of best practices around that as well. Right, so let's kick off with part one, which is focusing on inventory management. So if you've been selling on FBA on most Amazon stores, you're probably aware of the inventory performance index, or the IPI score, a measure essentially of how efficient and productive you are in managing your FBA inventory. So in order to make sure you're on top of that, it's best advised that you really focus on the attributes that impact it, such as your storage limits. And to do that, you want to be vigilant in kind of the following. So you need to make sure you have a balanced inventory level in terms of your sold and unsold goods. You should avoid excess inventory and long-term storage fees, and make sure you keep your best-selling products in stock in order to meet customer demand. Now, there are four important metrics to keep in mind, which you can see on screen. And the IPI dashboard enables you to see sort of how well essentially you're performing for each indicator. Green obviously indicating healthy or strong performance, red, orange kind of indicating where improvements can be made on your end. Now let's be a bit practical here. So how do you go about kind of improving your IPI score, which is particularly important in Q4? Well, I mean, firstly, it's good, as I mentioned, to remove any low performing or excess inventory, especially like stock. So say, for example, 180 days, there's a couple of options for that. You can kind of liquidate the stock, or you can kind of run promotions that can help run through that inventory. And sort of the manage inventory health tool can help you make those decisions. So please use that if you're not already. Then we have kind of the 80-20 rule, which is all about prioritizing, and it sort of highlights the 80% of your storage volume that should be made up of the 20% best-selling ASINs and products. Another tip I would advise on is try not to have more than 8 weeks cover, because I mean, essentially any stock that doesn't sell can increase your excess inventory percentage. And then finally, we do recommend sort of multi-channel fulfillment in order to improve your sell-through rate, as you'll be fulfilling orders to multiple channels, and if possible, also make sure you can try and send some smaller shipments into the FCs. The reason being is that they're going to be received quicker, and you obviously want to restock as soon as possible to make the most of the peak season. Fantastic. So you've heard from me sort of a bit more about inventory management, but let's hear it from our selling partners. So Ash, can you tell us a bit more about how you managed your inventory during peak, whilst sort of globally selling in the US or kind of other stores in Q4?
Yeah, sure. We kind of cover a variety of different ways of doing it, and especially at the moment, we're finding this Q4. We say this every year, but this seems to be the trickiest of all, mainly with supply chain issues. It's not as easy to get as much stock as we planned before. But things that we do, as you've already mentioned, is working on our IPI score continuously, like checking on that, because the number of variables there are really good at understanding what we should be doing. Should we be liquidating stock quickly when it's not selling, kind of freeing up some cash flow for the rest of our inventory, taking into account supply chain issues that are going on at the moment, planning ahead, maybe ordering more stock than you would normally order because of delays in transport and otherwise. And really just covering a variety of different variables on that. And it's really keeping an eye on your different metrics and how your SKUs are selling week on week as well, as we do enter the peak of Q4 going forward. Yeah.
Super useful, Ash. And I think that's some very good advice there. But okay, fantastic. So let's move on to kind of the second key point, the second key part, which is sort of conversion optimization, and really focusing on the kind of product detail pages. I mean, of course, there's never a bad time to improve your listings, but Q4 is where there is that traffic, that significant traffic compared to maybe some of the other quarters, but also equally the most competition. So it's more important than ever that you really stand out as much as possible. So firstly, you really will want to have a strong product title of sort of approximately 60 characters. That gives sort of the customer a good first impression, and keeping it informative, simple and easy to read, and really letting them know the important facts, just like you can see on the screen, is super important. Then try to display kind of 4 or more high resolution images if possible. Definitely, I think if you can include their video, do. I've seen this with sort of selling partners, and I think it looks great. So to see this all come to life, let's take an example of this fictitious brand, which as I said is on screen. So as mentioned, the title here really captures the brand name, the product line, the material, and the product type, and then also the size. That gives shoppers the most important information, without having to scroll further. And I think that's very important. It's also advised to include sort of at least three bullet points to help kind of provide additional information for purchase decisions. Now, these should begin with a capital letter and be formatted as a sentence fragment, i.e. the kind of punctuation. And the bullet points are there to really reiterate important info from the title and description. And so seeing, you can see here, as it's summarized, all the key product information is there, i.e. the content, the use, and the functionality. And just something worth considering, if you're expanded globally into some of these other stores, just bear in mind if you need to kind of optimize this or change this for the US store or the Australia store, etc. So just bear that in mind. Finally, the descriptions. I mean, that captures the benefits, the uses, the value proposition. Really short narrative. Keep it concise and informative. So I mean, here, if you take this example, if you have a read through that, they're demonstrating what makes their product special, and then what makes their their brand stand out. I mean, who doesn't like an irresistible layer of foam in your cappuccino or latte? So I think it's really good to kind of capture the customer in terms of what really would appeal to them, and how they would also use your product. So we've looked at how to optimize your product detail pages. Just before I move on to this A+ content, one other point to make, just as I mentioned before, is do tailor your content to the store that's relevant. Particularly if you're looking at the US, do tailor that content to make sure it's suited to a US audience. I think that's a very important point to make. So we've looked at the product detail page, but then how do you make your product even more compelling to shoppers? So that's where the A+ content comes in, and that's the tool available to selling partners that are enrolled in the brand registry, operation that we have. It really helps your product sort of stand out and really tells your brand story, which is in a very kind of rich way, essentially, with you can see the images, the text, and that kind of connects the shopper with your brand story and helps them kind of deep dive further. So let's see how that can be sort of structured essentially. So first, to make it really resonate with shoppers, I think follow a narrative arc and start with, how your brand came to be. How does it address the customer need or the pain points or other relevant context? I think a really good, authentic and unique story helps customers form an emotional connection with the brand and to kind of help you earn loyalty with them. I'd say then tell your product story by demonstrating its features and values. So really focus on those two. And then also a really important point is try and address the customer questions or purchase sort of barriers. Try and be forthcoming in terms of how the product works and sort of its features and functionalities. Because one important pitfall that you need to avoid is being sort of salesy, and describing your product as a kind of once in a lifetime opportunity, etc. Try instead to create sort of trust with them by explaining sort of how your product solves a problem for the shopper or kind of helps them essentially to reach a goal. So in this example from Vermont Teddy Bear, so they used A+ content to kind of educate shoppers about the history of the brand and share a little about how the bears were designed and manufactured, etc. To reiterate, I think an authentic story which kind of resonates with customers can really help to kind of build trust and earn loyalty. And that was highlighted by a Deloitte study that was done not too long ago, where 73% of customers who highly trust a brand have tried a new product or service from them. Brilliant. So that's me. I'm handing over now to Ash. Ash, it would be good to know, I mean, in terms of conversion optimization, how did you kind of alter, the detail pages? What features do you think are sort of super important, and what sort of tips, would you essentially share?
Sure, it's a great question. We tend to find this is a big thing during Q4, in particular, during peak time. You may have 2021 editions of a product or 2022 editions of a product, or certainly making sure that customers are aware that this is a fresh seasonal product, because a lot of times it may be a pre-existing listing or there may be some confusion where customers aren't sure if this is the latest edition. So it's really making sure that you've kind of nailed down the intricacies in your product detail. But overall, in terms of when it comes to like what I'd call best in class type of listings that we would expect on our product detail pages when I give it to the team is, as you've mentioned, making sure the images are the best they can be. How can we make more improvements on them? I mean, just hitting the mark on what Amazon's requirements are doesn't mean you're necessarily standing out. Like, can you offer more in-depth type of images, different angles, different product shots that go really beyond better resolution as well? It all helps in the customer experience. Copy as well, how can you keep improving on that, adding more details, new functionality, not just saying words for the sake of it. That's really important too, because customers see straight through that, but really nailing down the importance of different functionalities in your product or whatever kind of category you're in. And that also follows in as well with the A+ content, as you said, Kerry, kind of making sure that you're giving the full brand story, what you can do. It's also great if you've got a brand store as well. We have that in some of our global, with some of our global brands, where we've seen a great story of them looking at the A+ content and then following over into the brand store. So really important things. If you are competing on buy box, even if it is your own brand, just making sure that you're covering as well as much as that buy box, so keeping your eye on that. As much as people say that's not to do with the listing or the detail page, it's really important that you're making sure that you are covering that if it is your own brand. Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah, some really good points there, Ash. Particularly when considering different types of sellers, like distributors, but also kind of brand owners as well. So yeah, thanks very much for that. Brilliant. Right, let's move on to the third part of this webinar. So let's say let's focus on kind of promotions and advertising. So your listings are in fantastic shape. You know, what next? How do you then entice more customers to click on your product and really capitalize on the sort of sales frenzy during Q4? And then here essentially is where you want to kind of leverage advertising and promotions. So we'll start with kind of promotions that include sort of deals and coupons. So the key dates for holiday deals events is generally the last week of November, which doesn't seem too far away now. The year is flying by, which is kind of the Black Friday Cyber Monday week. So if you consider kind of that last week, so 22nd to 29th of November, that's important. It's also worth noting that the deal sourcing for holiday 2021 events have now closed, but it is still possible to run coupon campaigns, you know, where the submissions for event placements are still open until the very last day. So for .com, that's the 29th of November. You can also still run deals on your global selling account during the remainder of Q4, where traffic is likely to be higher than other kind of periods. It's advised, you know, therefore do check which eligible products you have when you go on kind of advertising deals and then create a new deal on Seller Central. You know, do bear in mind, of course, as well that each Amazon store has kind of different requirements for deals. So, for example, in the US, fees start from about $150 to run deals, whereas in Australia, all deals are free because it's a newer store. So there will be some variance about kind of the types of deals you can offer. You know, generally there are two kind of key types that sort of sellers like yourself can submit. So the main one's kind of lightning deals, which can last for up to sort of 8 hours or so, and then 7-day deals, which last for 7 days. So both deals kind of typically require you to offer discounts, and that's usually in the region of sort of 15 to 20% of the lowest sales price over a set period of time, such as, for example, 30 days prior to submission. Now, it's really, really important to stress that running deals will not just help to boost sales in the short term, but can also help to increase visibility for your products long term, because it means customers will leave more reviews, which will help to potentially kind of boost the sales ranking. And so that flywheel that you see really demonstrates that. But yeah, as we mentioned before, let's say you can't submit a deal, or you're looking for a holiday deal, but that time period has now kind of elapsed. What then? So as mentioned, I think creating a coupon campaign can also be a great option. The reasons for this, I mean, you know, you have complete control over the discount you're offering. You know, you can either do that through like $1 or a percentage discount. You can choose how long it runs for the campaign, and then also what sort of budget you have in mind for the campaign. The requirements sort of associated with it are that you have to have a pro selling account. You need to be the featured offer on the product detail page, and you need to beat the last kind of lowest price offered over the past kind of 30 days by at least 5%. So it needs to be 5% below the lowest price that was offered in the last 30 days. And also, I mean, it's worth noting, like, coupons are also open to, you know, products of all fulfillment types. So whether you're doing merchant fulfilled or FBA, you know, you can do that. And there's a flat fee that you can see on screen per redemption. So once you have these kind of fantastic promotions set up, you want to get as many eyes on them as possible. And that's where sponsored ads can be a great tool to take advantage. As I'm sure you know, most of you are aware, the most prominent options are sort of sponsored products and then sponsored brands, which are both kind of cost per click models, and they let you promote individual products or your brand in the shopping results categories or detail pages. So we're going to look into some ways you might want to deploy them. So option one when using sponsored ads is automatic targeting campaigns. and they're available only for sponsored products. And that's where Amazon automatically matches your ad to relevant customer queries and products. That's by far the easiest option and recommended if you're less experienced, as all you need to do is set a daily budget and the products you want to advertise. So in this case, the ones that have a promotion running. The second option is manual keyword campaign, where you select the specific keywords that are relevant to your product in order to kind of match the search queries that customers are making. So let's take a look at this example that you can see on screen. They've chosen to target the words coffee machine, meaning their products, are shown sort of at the top of the search results for this search query. Should they make the winning PPC bid? And then option 3 is a manual product campaign targeting, and essentially that targets your competitors' ASINs. So for example, if your ad can be viewed on the product detail page of a competitor's product, and you have a coupons campaign running, and they don't have any promotion, it could potentially entice shoppers to purchase your product instead. And then finally here we have option 4, which is manual product targeting for complementary products, and that helps kind of boost potentially boost the complementary products that you have. So for example, in this scenario, they've chosen to advertise coffee on their own product detail page of a discounted coffee machine. So they're advertising coffee and the coffee machine. This is a good kind of cross-selling strategy where the goal is, to boost visibility for complementary items that customers could also be searching for. So overall, what can you take away from this section on my end? Use promotions in tandem with advertising. I think that's a good best practice for helping to improve your discoverability and conversion essentially during peak. But yeah, don't just hear it from me. What about you, Ash? So tell us a bit more about kind of your promotions and sort of advertising strategy that you sort of deployed in the last couple of Q4s, in your kind of global stores.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, Kerry, you covered the different types of marketing strategies that can be done. This is a bit of a slide that I put together, but of what kind of things are making sure that your listings are all ready. But if we go to the next slide, over just really condensing down exactly what we do in Q4, as you said, pre-Black Friday and Cyber Monday deals. So a little bit different. We don't necessarily just run Black Friday and Cyber Monday deals, but in the run up to that time, so all the way at the moment in October and then into November, we are running campaigns to increase the sales ranking of our products, and it helps, as you said, it's a lot of people get confused that deals, that just reduces profitability, but you can turn it into something where it really stimulates demand for your products. Certainly newer lines or lines that are very seasonal, trigger that and it moves through. And you can kind of reap the rewards towards the real peak of Q4. Something we do suggest, depending on how you do Amazon advertising, is increasing your bid sizes. Because as the market does get more saturated, it's making sure that you bid healthy amounts on good performing keywords, and making sure that you're keeping an eye on that and you're continuously, however you do manage your Amazon advertising, making sure you're adjusting that continuously and looking at the data. I put brand analytics, but that's where applicable because some markets still don't have that introduced. But it's looking at the data and seeing what's performing well, how can you improve it. Sell your complementary products as well, because as you may have a really top performing single line, but now you're introducing sidelines, and certainly into Q4, it's a great time with all the traffic that's going to be on Amazon or is currently on Amazon. It's making sure that you're using that data to kind of cross sell. Put subscribe and save, but just generalizing that it's a great time, especially when you're introducing new customers, making sure that your products or seeing if your products are enrolled in subscribe and save, because as demand does reduce to the next quarter, Q1, Q2, it's great to already have people that are on that subscription basis, so that demand, a certain amount kind of demand retains. We've seen it year and year, time and time again, where that's really helped. And finally, I've put other marketing channels here, and what I mean is trying to see what you can do in terms of driving traffic from other platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, and so on. If you have brand stores set up in place, you can actually use a tagging thing. So you can tag traffic coming from other websites, and that will help you measure in your store analytics exactly who's coming from where. These are just kind of like an overview. It does really depend on your industry and how you're already doing marketing, but just would be our top tips of really trying to double down on demand and traffic in this busy time.
Really good point there, Ash. I think really focusing in on building your traffic in this period, and then thinking about how that then affects your strategy into kind of Q1, Q2, next year is a really good way to think about it. And I really like the point you made about subscribe and save. I mean, if the type of product is one that can sort of fit within that area, then it really does make sense. So brilliant. Thanks very much for that. Right, let's move on to our final section, which is focused on account health and how to kind of really proactively manage that. So really vital to proactively spot and resolve account health issues in good time, sort of before they escalate. There's a number of ways to really focus on doing that. So tip one is really do make sure that your emergency contact number is up to date. And that essentially the reason kind of behind that is it's the number that the account health team will call you if you're at risk of enforcement. Also really important to monitor and correct sort of product policy violations in Seller Central. So for details on kind of the listing specific violations, go on Seller Central, go on the performance tab, and then account health. And then for details of more account level violations, go on Seller Central performance again, and then go on performance notifications, and then you should be able to see them there. Right, next let's take a closer look at the order performance metrics, which are really critical to monitor closely for MFN, merchant fulfilled sellers. So first we have the ODR, or the order defect rate, which is essentially the percentage of orders with one or more indicators of poor customer service during a given 60-day time period. And that target for that is less than 1%, because we really ultimately want something that's going to be really good and provide a good customer experience. Then we have the late shipment rate, which is essentially the number of orders shipped, the number of orders shipped that confirmed after kind of the expected ship date, and that's a percentage of the total orders. Again, the target here is less than 4%, so make sure you keep an eye on that. And then finally, there's the pre-fulfillment cancellation rate, and that's essentially the number of orders unfulfilled, and that divided by the number of orders that are marked shipped, and the target is less than sort of 2.5% there within the previous 7 days. So if any of these exceed the target, you'll be notified by Amazon via a performance notification, or a case log, or it can also be a phone call, as I've mentioned. So strongly advised to be aware of any issues and resolve them before they escalate. I can't emphasize that enough. Try and resolve them before they do escalate there. So here are some of the best practices that we'd advocate to really ensure that your account is in good health, particularly if you're a merchant fulfilled seller. So firstly, do please pay close attention to shipping settings and make sure that the orders are delivered on time. So you have essentially the estimated delivery date, which is the handling time plus the transit time plus any holidays to bear in mind. It's quite important, therefore, to be vigilant of the handling time, the time elapsed between when the buyer places an order and then the time where it's handed over to the delivery service, and also the transit time, etc., and also when it's handled then through to the carrier that then delivers the product. So both of these can be edited on your account essentially. and really good focus on Q4 if you are doing merchant fulfilled in other global stores, because it might be a good idea to increase these temporarily, just to bear in mind the fact that it's a very busy period. Another really important practice is to be very transparent with your customers when it comes to the delivery status of the orders. So just what I mentioned. So do provide tracking numbers and set time aside and resources to communicate with your with your customers. Particularly in Q4, I mean, if you have your customers kind of looking for a product that they can gift, etc., it's especially important. So, I mean, if an order is delayed, for example, it's a good idea to kind of proactively reach out to the customer via messaging, apologize and provide an updated ETA. Another proactive measure is to keep your late shipment rate as low as possible, and check with your carriers to ensure the usual sort of delivery experience. You might also want to consider using different carriers as a backup option in case there are sort of other delays, etc. But that's about it for account health and kind of the areas to focus on, both if you're merchant fulfilled, but also just more broadly on your sort of account health, focusing in on the account and ASIN level. So Ash, let's get some of your thoughts on, how you've managed your account health, in stores like the US, etc. during peak. What kind of tools did you use, and what sort of metrics, were you vigilant of when you were really focusing in on Q4?
Sure. Yeah, it's one of the most important parts, really. We all try to make sure that our Amazon account health is always in good order, but things do go wrong that can sometimes be out of your control, and it's about bringing that into your control as much as possible. So first things first, as you mentioned, just making sure your contact details are absolutely up to date, because Amazon are great at reaching out when things do go wrong. Obviously, they'll be strict and make sure that, are you doing things right, where you can go wrong. But if your contact details aren't there, they can't get in touch with you, and that can cause all sorts of issues down the line. So really, really important to emphasize that. And then where I really go with this is your delivery promise, because certainly when you're, say you're merchant fulfilling to the US, some of you are already doing FBA as well, but say in merchant fulfilled, for example, it's making sure, certainly at these times as well, and through COVID, shipments weren't always arriving as scheduled. Things could go wrong in a certain USPS depot and so on. So something we did, it really just depends on what you've got in place, is we have an entire portfolio of all of our tracking numbers that we do externally on Amazon, and we're just checking how quickly items are taking to get into Amazon. As soon as we see a bit of a flag up in things taking a bit longer than usual, we make sure that we're trying to adjust our delivery windows accordingly. And okay, you can't always 100% make sure that every customer receives everything on time, but it's kind of damage limitation if things do go wrong. Hopefully things don't, but keeping an eye on things. So really all I'd say to sellers out there is, in your own way, try and see what you can do to bring those things that could be out of your hands into your hands, and kind of protect your account at all costs. And that leads into your customer service. It will hopefully reduce the number of customer complaints. But if you do get them, really being on top of them quicker than you ever are, building your team up, however you are handling them, just being as proactive. And both of these together, along with a lot of other variables that we've spoken about in the presentation, will help with your defect rate overall. Things do go wrong again. The odd customer may leave the odd complaint or A to Z claim. But overall, if you're really keeping on top of this and offering that best customer-centric experience, you should be good for Q4 and going forward. And finally, something that a lot of people do kind of eye roll with, and I certainly did in the old days, of like, what exactly is Amazon policy obligations? But Amazon policy obligations, you're basically, they continuously update their policies in place, their selling practices. And it's making sure that you're up to date with them, because they do that for a reason. They're making sure that the products that are sold are safe, good for customers, and meet all the requirements. And it's making sure that you're well versed on that, because the last thing you want to do is list a product that may not be compliant, and it affects the rest of your account. So it's something, time and time again is overlooked. It's not as daunting as it may sound to look at the policies Amazon have in place. Check through them, just make sure that are the way you're even writing your listings. Are you putting incorrect information, has another seller contributed to incorrect information, keeping an eye on where you can. Again, it's all just limiting the damage that could be done if something does go wrong in the event of that.